I mean, you got to just realize what's going to happen here. Is JayZ going to do anything to Nicki Minaj? She's making it very clear on what she's coming out with. So this is the part that you got to watch very closely on how Trump's handled this. Now, don't get me wrong. We've seen the clips that there was a relationship, that they would talk and the exchange and all this other stuff. Yes, we've seen that as well.
This isn't a feud. It feels like a public campaign to bury a billionaire. What first looked like another celebrity meltdown has shifted from sharp words to serious accusations, from bruised egos to talk of investigations and prison. Now Nicki Minaj is refusing to let JayZ fade into silence, tying her album rollout to demands for renegotiation and invoking RICO conspiracy and civil rights violations as if a case file already exists. She claims she is owed between $100 million and $200 million from the 2021 TIDAL sale to Square for $297 million and warns Roc Nation leadership that their time is running out, turning the March 27, 2026 release date into a ticking clock. JayZ says nothing. The machine says nothing. If this were baseless noise, why does it keep intensifying instead of cooling down? And if it's leverage, what exactly is she holding that makes her speak like someone seeking consequences, not closure?
And you're not going to go sue everybody that's going to do whatever they're going to say. Nicki Minaj is not nobody. If Nicki Minaj tweets something like this and JayZ doesn't sue, well, it's very different than what Trump does.
This is where the pressure shifts from spectacle to structure. The album isn't just delayed, it's weaponized. She floats October 2nd and late September before locking in March 27th, 2026, then threatens to pull the project entirely, tagging JayZ with "Hope You're Happy Now," turning the date into a public trigger rather than a rollout plan. Industry observers note you don't tie a release date to a grievance unless you're seeking leverage, and she repeatedly insists the album remains frozen until her contract is renegotiated and until she reveals what she claims a RICO is uncovering about Billboard sabotage. That language carries weight, implying documentation, coordination, and deliberate interference, which she keeps linking back to Roc Nation and its leadership. While the surface narrative calls it a meltdown, the pattern looks more like targeted escalation, with money at the center. She says she is owed between $100 million and $200 million from the 2021 TIDAL sale to Square for $297 million, a figure she repeats whenever tensions spike, suggesting it is the unresolved core grievance. She also claims she was offered only a fraction of what she believes she deserves, yet no lawsuit appears and no filings surface. Instead, the conflict plays out publicly, a strategy insiders say favors amplification over sealed court records. The confusion deepens when financial claims expand into allegations of blackballing, chart manipulation, sabotage, conspiracies, and civil rights violations, widening the scope far beyond a payout dispute. She mocks Roc Nation while asserting the company once tried and failed to sign her, framing the fallout as obstruction, even alleging surveillance, hacked accounts, suppressed engagement, and systematic interference designed to stall her projects until financial pressure forces compliance. That is not rivalry language. It is siege language, and each time she names JayZ directly, she signals she views him not as a bystander, but as the figure.
Apparently, Nicki Minaj has dragged JayZ to filth. She blasts him for being evil and spiteful.
The Grammys become the accelerant. On February 1st, Trevor Noah jokes that she is still at the White House with Donald Trump discussing important issues, and although she isn't in the building, she floods her timeline in real time, calling the ceremony a ritual and warning it will backfire. She lashes out at multiple celebrities, but the through line remains the same: JayZ. She posts images of him with younger women, attaches alleged ages to when they met, labels him a predator, and repeats claims that powerful figures maintain control through sacrifice and secrecy, shifting the tone from corporate grievance to moral indictment. Industry insiders say that once a dispute is framed in ethical rather than financial terms, the endgame changes. This no longer reads like a fight over money, but like an attempt to permanently stain a legacy. Meanwhile, silence from his side grows more conspicuous. No statement, no rebuttal, no clarification through representatives, despite Roc Nation's reputation for swift legal responses when it dislikes commentary. That absence becomes its own narrative. Some see confidence, others strategy, But as the silence stretches, her accusations expand into references to conspiracy and false imprisonment. She repeats that the album will remain unreleased until her contract is renegotiated and until she reveals what she claims a RICO investigation is uncovering about Billboard. Invoking that phrase like a breadcrumb trail, she refuses to fully map. If it's a bluff, it's sustained. If it's leverage, it's escalating. Then a separate but orbiting issue resurfaces, a long-running paternity claim publicly thanking Nicki and the president for assistance, even as court records show setbacks, including an award of $119,235.45 in attorney's fees under an anti-SLAPP statute. Though technically distinct, the case circles the same central figure, and her public engagement with the claimant fuels the perception that controversies around JayZ are not isolated, but
felonies. I'm not crazy or none of that. It's like, I just want the truth, and it's so hard to get it from the courts. And seems like JayZ don't want to say anything. So, I don't want to see him go down for something that you could have just got taken care of. That's it.
politics amplify everything. Her public alignment with Donald Trump, including appearing at a Washington event announcing so-called Trump accounts and calling herself his #1 fan, turns into both ammunition for critics and a badge of defiance for supporters. The Grammys' joke about her supposed White House presence isn't just comedy. It signals that she stands outside the industry's comfort zone. After that moment, her posting intensifies, and she tells her audience she may begin sharing story times because the bullying continues, framing the resistance against her as coordinated and ideological. Those close to her say she believes she is fighting not just for money, but for autonomy against a gatekeeping power structure. Yet the contradiction lingers. If that structure is truly as powerful as she suggests, how does she continue speaking so freely without immediate pushback? And if it isn't that powerful, why does she sound so certain it could crush her unless she escalates all the way?
Let's start with an exorcism.
Oh
Exorcism.
my God!
This
Dang.
woman,
You think she
there's a lot
possessed?
What y'all think?
I don't think exorcism. I don't think an exorcism is needed.
I thought maybe a benefit concert. But I also talked.
Donation, definitely. Donation.
Of course,
always thought
you
with
have
donation.
to. Yeah, that's the foundation of the start. And then you got to sit down with Gayle King.
The album date looms over everything, with March 27th, 2026 functioning like a countdown clock as she announces it, withdraws it, reinstates it, and then conditions it on contract renegotiation, a volatility that reads less like chaos and more like calculated pressure aimed at fans, executives, and rivals alike. Industry sources note that delaying a project of that scale costs both money and momentum, raising the question of why she would risk such losses unless the leverage gained outweighs them. At the same time, separate legal pressures surround her camp, including a reported attempt to force the sale of her California home to satisfy a $53,000 judgment tied to an alleged assault case she denies, complicating any narrative that positions her solely on offense and turning the situation into a multi-front battlefield. As she repeatedly promises to expose what she knows, the focus shifts from reclaiming control to the possibility of detonating something larger and harder to contain. The longer it stretches on, the less it resembles a personal vendetta and the more it looks like a pressure campaign against an entire ecosystem. As she expands her targets beyond a single executive or grievance to include award shows, chart authorities, and the unseen mechanisms that determine visibility and headlining status. Insiders say that when an artist begins naming institutions rather than individuals, the message evolves from "you wronged me" to "the system is rigged," a line that invites broader scrutiny. Her language about sabotage, stalled projects, and shadow forces manipulating visibility mirrors long-whispered industry frustrations. But what changes now is that someone with her reach is saying it publicly and repeatedly, tying those claims to a specific powerful figure and creating tension not only for him, but for anyone reliant on the same infrastructure to operate.
John Legend, Billie Eilish, Phineas, Nicki Minaj is not here. She is not here. She is still at the White House with Donald Trump discussing very important issues.
Her political pivot complicates everything. Appearing alongside the president at a Washington event announcing investment accounts for children, calling herself his #1 fan, and holding up a gold card with his face on it are hardly neutral gestures in an industry that leans the other way. When a Grammys host jokes that she is at the White House instead of in the arena, the room laughs. Cameras capture the reaction, and she fires back in real time, turning the friction between her alignment and the industry's tone into combustible fuel. Those close to her say she views the backlash as proof she is being targeted for stepping out of line, while critics argue she is manufacturing outrage to energize her base. Either way, politics fuses with a financial dispute, transforming what might have been a contained disagreement into a broader cultural standoff. She frames herself as someone who once admired the mogul she now criticizes, casting the fallout as a broken alliance. And insiders note that in this business loyalty is currency, so perceived betrayal can cut deeper than money. By invoking the business acumen she once respected and reframing it as exploitation and suppression, the conflict shifts from contractual disagreement to collapse of trust at the top, especially as she positions him as a gatekeeper to opportunities and cultural validation. If enough people accept the idea that access flows through a tight circle, any exclusion can be read as deliberate freezing out. At the same time, financial and legal pressures around her own camp, including reports of efforts to enforce judgments against her assets and a former employee lawsuit alleging assault and battery, which she denies, add a shadow layer that complicates the narrative. To skeptics, escalating claims of conspiracy and coordinated sabotage look like distraction. To supporters, they resemble retaliation against a system that strikes first. That split fuels polarization, and as she continues speaking,
When I hosted a breakfast for Dr. King today for the Rainbow Push Coalition, Reverend Jesse Jackson's organization, and people are really mobilized. And obviously people at this event had heard about it, and these are the attorneys for the Bar Association in Chicago and on it, civil rights attorneys are saying, bring it on, because this is what the civil rights movement was about. Don, they said.
Her political pivot complicates everything. Appearing alongside the president at a Washington event announcing investment accounts for children, calling herself his #1 fan, and holding up a gold card with his face on it are hardly neutral gestures in an industry that leans the other way. When a Grammys host jokes that she is at the White House instead of in the arena, the room laughs. Cameras capture the reaction, and she fires back in real time, turning the friction between her alignment and the industry's tone into combustible fuel. Those close to her say she views the backlash as proof she is being targeted for stepping out of line, while critics argue she is manufacturing outrage to energize her base. Either way, politics fuses with a financial dispute, transforming what might have been a contained disagreement into a broader cultural standoff. She frames herself as someone who once admired the mogul she now criticizes, casting the fallout as a broken alliance. And insiders note that in this business loyalty is currency, so perceived betrayal can cut deeper than money. By invoking the business acumen she once respected and reframing it as exploitation and suppression, the conflict shifts from contractual disagreement to collapse of trust at the top, especially as she positions him as a gatekeeper to opportunities and cultural validation. If enough people accept the idea that access flows through a tight circle, any exclusion can be read as deliberate freezing out. At the same time, financial and legal pressures around her own camp, including reports of efforts to enforce judgments against her assets and a former employee lawsuit alleging assault and battery, which she denies, add a shadow layer that complicates the narrative. To skeptics, escalating claims of conspiracy and coordinated sabotage look like distraction. To supporters, they resemble retaliation against a system that strikes first. That split fuels polarization, and as she continues speaking,
I would want, why?
Just to talk to her, answer face to face.
One answer.
This is where the atmosphere tightens. In high-level entertainment circles, reputation functions as currency, and association can quickly become liability. So when allegations evolve from financial grievances into language suggesting coordinated wrongdoing, exposure is recalculated in real time. Industry veterans may be known for protecting their own, but that instinct has limits once narratives begin invoking conspiracy and racketeering, because at that point alliances stop being emotional and start becoming strategic. The question shifts from who you support to what that support might cost, and the changes, while subtle, become measurable. Fewer joint appearances, cooler collaborative energy, less mutual praise, and a noticeable restraint from artists and executives who once publicly amplified shared milestones. It is not an outright collapse, yet it is clearly not business as usual. If the accusations are baseless, the retreat seems curious. If they carry weight, the distancing feels instinctual. Either way, it signals a level of uncertainty rarely seen around someone long viewed as untouchable. As she continues to hint that exposure is imminent, those within his orbit appear to recalibrate, because in this industry loyalty often bends when legal implications enter the frame. If her tone truly reflects the existence of documentation capable of triggering investigations or arrests, then anyone financially or reputationally intertwined would have reason to create distance, and even that possibility alone is enough to alter behavior. Entertainment ecosystems rely on stability, and the mere suggestion of formal scrutiny can destabilize calculations overnight, shifting how power brokers position themselves long before any official action ever materializes.
And we do have some breaking news that we want to bring to you. It was being reported by TMZ and now Fox News. We are learning that JayZ is accused of raping a 13-year-old girl. That is new in the Diddy lawsuit.
That is the true pressure multiplier. If she is exaggerating, then the visible distancing becomes an overreaction that exposes fear where none should exist. But if she is accurate, the silence and strategic withdrawals begin to look like preparation rather than indifference. The stakes now stretch far beyond two celebrities exchanging accusations and instead pull in managers, collaborators, investors, and public allies who understand that in a high-profile unraveling, proximity can shift from privilege to potential liability. What intensifies the volatility is how separate controversies start orbiting the same center, including a long-running paternity dispute that resurfaces with public gratitude directed toward her and the president, alongside renewed circulation of court rulings, fee awards, and procedural setbacks. While technically unrelated, these threads merge in the public imagination into a broader pattern of unresolved tension around the same figure. That accumulation creates the impression of smoke, even if each spark ignites elsewhere, and rather than avoiding that smoke, she leans into a narrative that powerful individuals shield themselves until someone refuses to stay silent. Now everything hinges on timing. A promised project remains in limbo, allegations linger without formal escalation, and silence grows heavier than denial. If this is posturing, it is sustained at a level that risks permanent fracture. If it is something deeper, the next move is unlikely to be subtle. The looming questions become unavoidable. What happens if the countdown reaches zero and nothing shifts? What if the RICO rhetoric evolves into specific names, documents, or filings? And what does it signal that the most powerful figure in the frame continues to say nothing as the accusations multiply? Because whatever this is, it clearly is not over.